So some prime examples of the effects of high resolution and surround sound would be The Zoo by Merel Vercammen, for example, as well as Where the Fence is the Highest by Teis Semey, simply because you really feel like you're there in the room. You really feel like you're part of the recording. You hear the sounds that musicians make, not just with their instruments, but with their moving around. During a drum solo, you would suddenly hear like sticks clicking together, or all of these accidental sounds, and you pick that up with high resolution and multi-channel.
So for The Zoo, we recorded in a very small church, also in the south of the Netherlands. I recorded there with singer Bernadette Astari, and we were really inspired by the birds from outside, because the church was not very well isolated, but we could hear the birds, and then we were inspired by it, and because it's live improvisation, you play with the birds, basically. So one thing I don't like in general about the classical music recording industry is that it's focused so much on perfection. In lots of classical music recordings, there's so many cuts, and you really lose the spirit of the music when you cut so much. So I had a really big dream, a big wish to record a live album once. And something that's really suitable for a live album is, of course, improvisation. I'm a classical violinist and I improvise a lot. And then I suggested this idea to Brendon from Triptych, and he said, okay, let's do it. Let's record a live improvisation album. And I'm so happy we did. The result is called The Zoo. When I heard the result here in the studio, I was really surprised, because I've recorded before and I've listened to lots of recordings also on my own headphones. And one of the recordings we did was violin and organ. And organ usually doesn't sound very good on headphones or normal speakers. But here on this system, it sounded like you were completely immersed by the organ. It was just all around, and it felt so natural and so much like the actual experience I had when I was in the church recording. It was very special.
So I met Brendon during the fall of 2017, where I released a set of videos of my music on YouTube, and he reached out to me and asked me to come here and talk about music together. And as we talked about music and recording together, we both saw some possibilities in how we could record this kind of music. For me, when Brendon told me about his direction in recording, the high quality, high audiophile kind of thing, it's a world that's very distant from jazz usually. Traditionally, jazz and improvised music is not recorded by high-end audiophile record companies. So for both Brendon and I, we found this as an exciting new territory to go into. So one of the suites I wrote for this album, Contemporary Jazz Improvised Music Suites, are Japan Suite, and the second the second part of that suite is called Fall. That's a really interesting piece because it has a huge dynamic range, and not only that, but also a big change of color in our instrumentation. It starts with a massive drum solo, and then there's whispered words. It goes into a whole band tutti playing melodies. Then suddenly there's a trio moment with only piano, a duo moment with only guitar and saxophone, and then the whole band kind of whispers the song out. And the interesting thing is that through all these moments, you can really hear how each instrument sounds extremely alive in this recording format, which is not always evident in other recording formats. For example, when you hear the saxophone and guitar, I think most listeners would be amazed to hear how defined each instrument sounds separately, but still blends together really nicely. I feel as a musician, my job is to just search for authenticity and real expression in music. And for me, it's never been important how high the resolution is, or how it's recorded, or how it's edited. It's not of my importance. My importance is to make authenticity. And what I really found inspiring to work with Triptych and Brendon is that the high resolution never gets in the way. It's a search for high authenticity and to make all the music tell its story very clearly. And I think that's been achieved, and that's what they continue to achieve with every album, which tells much more about the record label and a vision for music, where the technology is a tool rather than the technology being the vision and the authenticity being a tool.
One is more an improvisation project of classical music, and the other is more of a contemporary jazz setting. But what sets them both apart is really that you get this feeling of actually being there in the recording room. You actually hear all of the sounds of the musicians, and not just sort of the music that they play and the instrument sounds, but just them moving around in the room and hearing all of these extra noises that make a recording so special and lifelike.